Welcome. Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session Transition to Low Carbon Buildings in Asia, Way Forward. This event is part of the COP29 Buildings and Cooling Pavilion, focusing on the pivotal role of law on the transition to low carbon buildings, especially in Asian countries. We have here partners from our consortium in the project, in the ALCBT project, from the Global Green Growth Institute, GGGI, from the Asian Center of Energy, and the Energy Efficiency Service Limited of India, and HEAT. I'm the managing director of HEAT. My name is Dietram Oppold. The building sector, we all know the building sector accounts for about 40% of global emissions. Our discussion today will spotlight strategies for reducing embodied and operational carbon in buildings, fostering collaboration and achieving net zero, latest by 2050. I would like to mention the Germany as an important sponsor of the global ABC, remaining committed to supporting ambitious action in the building sector, emphasizing cross-border partnerships. And the project we have here, ALCBT project, is sponsored by Germany under the International Climate Initiative. And we have a distinguished speaker here from Germany, Dr. Lutz Morgenstern, Head of Division of Climate Action and Energy Transition. So I would like to hand over the word to Dr. Lutz Morgenstern to give us a keynote. Please, over to you.
Okay, shall I stand here? Or yeah, so State Secretary and dear guests here, dear participants at this event, it's really a great pleasure for me to be here. We are in the final stage of the COP, so everything is really tense. Everyone is looking at the negotiation text. I think this is the reason why we are not a big group here, but I'm still very happy that even though we are in the final stage, you still made it to this event and we can have this kind of exchange. Also, I would like to say that, this project has been selected before I took over the position that I now have as head of division. But I know the project from the paper, and this for me is the first occasion that I actually meet the people, the partners that implement the project, that cooperate in this project. And this is always for me a very good opportunity, because only if you meet the people who implement the project, you can actually understand what is possible with the project. So I'm looking forward to getting a bit more insights on that. Our minister from our Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action was here at the COP on Monday, and he highlighted in that speech that we really need to pick up speed, and we need to look at all sectors. We see successes in some sectors, and especially in the energy sector, the expansion of renewable energies. But he also specifically mentioned the building sector as one sector where we need to do much more. The building sector, if we account everything from the construction of the buildings to the use of the buildings, and maybe at one stage the recycling of buildings, accounts for 40% of global emissions. And particularly in Asia, many buildings will still be built in the future. That's a difference from Germany, where the challenge lies more in the existing buildings and the retrofitting of buildings. So the challenges are different, but still it's a challenging sector. And therefore, it's really important that we tackle this sector, that we do this kind of cooperation. In Germany, I can say our experience is that we always have to think about how to convince the public, the people, that our policies are actually necessary. We made some experience last year. I don't know whether this has been maybe reported in Asia as well. Our ministry has proposed very ambitious building codes for very high efficiency standards. But the public discussion then turned against this proposal, and we had to extend the deadlines for gas heating, for example, a little bit, and the introduction of heat pumps, because some people, some parts of the population just were not convinced that this solution is actually viable. So working with the people, involving people, and convincing them that this is actually viable and in the long run it pays off is very important. The IKI focus has a focus on several sectors and several policies, but buildings has always been a very important topic with 18 projects in the building sector with a volume of 220 million euros, and this project is one of this, and we will continue. We also try to connect the different projects so as to use synergies. And now I do not want to talk much longer, but I'm really looking forward to hearing your views and then also maybe enter into some discussion. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Mr. Morgenstern, Dr. Morgenstern. So this was a very good introduction. So with this, we have also two speakers online, and I would like to give the floor now to Mrs. Julie Roberts, and Julie is the program director of the EKI project, and she will give us an overview of the Asia Low Carbon Transition Project and what this project is about. Julie, over to you.
Thank you, Ditram. So, as mentioned, one of the key initiatives supported by the German government is the Asia Low Carbon Buildings Transition Project, or ALCBT. It covers 5 countries, Cambodia, India, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. So with regards to the context in pursuing the transition to low carbon buildings in the region, ASEAN building sector accounted for 24% of energy-related carbon dioxide emissions in 2019, excluding emissions from manufacturing building materials. And in India, the building sector account for around 40% of national CO2 emissions. As highlighted in IEA Southeast Asia Energy Outlook 2024, the region's building sector sees energy consumption almost double by 2050. So energy demand in the buildings correlates with floor space, which is projected to increase by more than 80% between 2023 and 2050, driven by increasing population and rising incomes in the region. Households account for more than 70% of energy consumption, with space cooling at around 30% of the energy consumed in buildings. So as incomes are rising, major increases in air conditioning ownership are also projected, such as in Indonesia, where the share of households with air conditioning could increase from under 15% currently to 85% in 2050. The cooling demand in Southeast Asia is expected to grow 6-fold by 2050, which in turn causes significant growth in CO2 emissions. So alongside building operation emissions, the embodied carbon emissions of materials used in building construction accounts for about 10% energy-related GHG emissions and approximately 20 to 25% of building life cycle emissions. The region's increasing floor area could represent nearly half of the new construction in the world by 2040. So one of the highest potential for substantial carbon saving is therefore in buildings that are yet to be built. So some of the barriers that prevent large-scale adoption of low-carbon buildings include policy gaps, inadequate implementation and enforcement and capacity limitations, lack of concessional finance, and lack of a consistent framework for computing energy savings, which the ALCBT aims to address in project countries. ALCBT seeks to significantly reduce GHG emission of around 1.67 million tons of CO2 equivalent by catalyzing nationwide transition towards low-carbon buildings in Asian countries. So to achieve this target, the project develops standardized tools and system for managing carbon emissions from the building sector through whole life carbon assessment approach and MRV tool and piloting them at sub-national level. We partner with 3 states in India, Haryana, Kerala, and Uttar Pradesh, Phnom Penh in Cambodia, and through pilot city assessment to select a target city in Indonesia and Vietnam. The project has also developed professional training modules, and the program will be launched this year, rolled out in partnership with local institutions. We also partner with local universities to integrate low carbon and energy efficient buildings in their syllabus. This enhances the capacity of current and future building industry practitioners through training and knowledge transfer, and for sustained learning and adoption even after the end of the project. And to facilitate the flow of needed financing for low carbon building projects, we engage with domestic and international financial institutions and energy service companies through a green finance network to discuss and address barriers to financing and share knowledge on effective products and services. And in parallel, enhancing taxonomy for linking carbon performance of buildings with financing and preparing a pipeline of projects meeting the investment criteria from banks and investors. The project will also implement retrofitting in 100 buildings to promote efficient cooling equipment using natural refrigerants with capital recovery through tried and proven business approach of demand aggregation and bulk procurement demonstration to promote wider adoption. And lastly, through knowledge sharing and exchange across ASEAN and globally, ALCBT aims to create market demand for low carbon buildings and promote replication and scaling up. So, as mentioned, the project is funded by the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action under the International Climate Initiative, and it will be implemented for 5 years from 2023 to 2028 and target policymakers from national and subnational governments, building industry professionals, financial institutions, and universities as beneficiaries to advance low carbon building transition in project countries. The ALCBT implementation is led by the Global Green Growth Institute, together with our consortium partners, the ASEAN Center for Energy, Heat, and Energy Efficiency Services Limited. That ends my presentation. Thank you for your attention. Over to you, Ditram.
Many thanks, Julie. And I think your presentation also highlighted the significant building activity which is going on in these 5 countries, which we have: India, Indonesia, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam, which is probably the region or the countries contributing most in building emissions in the future, in the years to come. So with this, I would like to go to my input. So there's a presentation, the next presentation. So what we as HEAT contribute is one of the key contributions is we develop a tool for capturing. If you can shift to the presentation, do I have to click? Can you shift to the other presentation? There is no. Okay, so if there is no presentation, I will just explain it. You don't have presentation? Okay. Okay, so what we are doing is we're developing a tool which is addressing both embodied carbon and operational carbon. So this is the first time this is introduced. So far, basically, with this, we would like to have a comprehensive coverage of total climate impact emissions, because which is focusing on embodied carbon, which so far has not been addressed comprehensively in all the 5 countries. And this allows for comprehensive coverage of the climate impact of buildings. So the current status is, as Julie has pointed out, in the different countries, we have a carbon footprint of buildings of about 23% to 40%, which is just the operational part. So there is no clear understanding what is the embodied carbon element of the buildings. Typically, the embodied carbon is about 25% of the total climate impact of buildings. And so the embodied carbon is more complicated to capture, and that's why this has not been done so far in all the 5 Asian countries. And so what and the embodied carbon share will rise, because if electricity grids are declining or basically going to renewables, which we see in all the 5 countries, and we have a decarbonization of the energy supply, which will happen faster, then the material part of the carbon footprint will increase in relative share. And so what we want to do is in the transformation, we see basically want to have a comprehensive addressing the life carbon footprint of the buildings. And we develop a tool which is completely open source and which is allowing the integration of natural material databases to capture the carbon footprint of different materials like cement, steel, and also alternative materials. And this will basically then also serve as a basis for certification of buildings. And this will allow the certification financial institutions to use the tool and their certification to do the financing, the lending of buildings. And most of the construction activity is based on financing. So that will be one important lever. The other important lever is to work together with the governments for green public procurement. That is a significant part of the building activity in all the countries, and we have started here in India. Like Julie has, we start in free states of India. So we have agreements also with the free states, and we are now capturing data on both the embodied carbon and the operational carbon, and we will integrate this data in the tool. Okay, so here we go. So this is on the left side. This is what we want to introduce. Okay, so on the left side, you see then the carbon footprint of the buildings on the different elements of a building. So we want to have a comprehensive understanding what is the carbon footprint per square meter per year over the lifetime of the year of the building, and then on the different elements. And we want to benchmark this across different building types and across different states in India, and then all the 5 countries in Asia for the rollout. And go to the next slide. Stuck again. Okay, so that is what so our future vision is then, I said, so current state, the transformation, and our future vision is basically that countries hopefully will have a comprehensive capture of the life cycle emissions, and they will integrate them also embodied carbon in the building code. So far in no country in these 5 countries embodied carbon is included in the building codes, and then also increasingly or a step-by-step move to also making this mandatory. And then with this basically also have, if buildings have this kind of standard, this is important demand factor for low carbon materials. Okay, so there's some problem with moving from one slide to the next. Sorry? Okay. Yeah, can you go to the next slide? All right. So with this, basically we want to introduce, the first step is also rating, including the embodied carbon on the whole life cycle of the buildings, and then introduce that for green buildings first, and then going to net zero buildings eventually. So next slide, please. Yeah, this is an example from Europe where this is already very effectively integrated in Europe, in Denmark. So Denmark has this kind of embodied carbon targets and is increasing it year by year. And if you go to Denmark, you can already see that this is an impact because the buildings look different. They have more wood content and so less steel, and so it can have a clear impact. And yeah, and so what we do is with this tool, we have, at the moment, we have it in Excel, and now we're working on an online version. So it will be, the online tool should be finished, or the first version by end of this year. And then we have basically 2 versions. There's a light version and there's a deeper version. So the light version is to get a quick assessment of the carbon footprint of the building, and then the deeper version captures all the information and then can be also eventually used for certification. So we'll do that, and then next slide, please. So yeah, we also have the advisor. So we'll present the tool to the advisory board, get the feedback, and then we have all kind of stakeholders. Then we will, and that's what we're working on, bring the tool into implementation, bring live data into it, and then also have pilot projects to evaluate, and then engage it and have the rollout to all the 5 countries, also including Cambodia. So very much looking forward to that. So with this, I just like to finish this part, and then I like to now go to the next part of our discussion, where basically I would also like to welcome the State Secretary of Cambodia, Mr. Mao, from Ministry of Urban Planning and Construction. Mr. Mao, so we would be very interested to understand from you what is the status quo of buildings in Cambodia? What are your plans? You plan to be climate neutral by 2050. How do you like to achieve this? And what contribution do you see from this project and also from building sector overall? Yeah.
Can I just stand there?
Yeah.
Is it working? Is it working? Hello? Hello? Yeah, working. Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank Cool Coalition and partner organization for their kind invitation extended to me to attend this important event, transition to low carbon buildings in Asia and a way forward. As the earlier speaker mentioned, building sector contribution is, are significant in the economy elsewhere, and Cambodia is very particular noteworthy because as a post-conflict country, we have been ramping up our construction effort in the nation building effort. So construction industry constitute one of the top, 5 pillars of the economy. So building sector contribution to climate change are important but often overlooked, and so are the climate impacts to sector challenges. However, if done right, I think the sector can significantly help address the issue, transitioning to low carbon buildings, reducing GHG emission from the sector, enhancing public well-being. And doing this, we need to address at least such imperative of regulation, capacity building, and financing. Indeed, certain conventional building practices are no longer viable and sustainable. That require new thinking. I think not only in Cambodia but elsewhere, right? Cambodia is a country vulnerable to climate change, and we've been doing all we can to join the global efforts to address climate change and promoting people well-being. We take climate change seriously, as well as green transformation. We encourage green investment, and it's become a priority in our national development policy. Cambodia updated NDC present our commitment and need to realize vision of low carbon and resilient economy in society. For instance, in the energy sector, we aim to reduce our emission target by over 21%, and in industrial sector, including construction, over 90%. And we have adopted long-term strategy to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050 through continued effort to address deforestation, land use, decarbonize our power sector, pursue energy efficiency, as well promote low carbon agriculture, industrial processes, and waste management. Cambodia is working to enable creative financing opportunity for such investment. We strongly believe that the private sector, construction industry, development partners can play a more important role in our partnership toward low carbon, inclusive, sustainable economy and society. My ministry, by encouraging locally available material like bamboo, we thinking of urban regeneration. That is the hardest part. If you plan for a new urban area, that's quite easy, right? But when you deal with the people living in the depopulated buildings and community, it's very, doubling challenging, right? And we are implementing climate resilient social housing for the most vulnerable people across the kingdom, most of them displaced by climate change events like or war, veteran family from the war, right? And in this sector specific, Cambodia has adopted National Cooling Action Plan, and we have National Strategic Plan on Green Growth 2013-2030. We have National Energy Efficiency Policy 2020-2030. And yet I have to admit that this area is relatively new to us, Cambodia, thus presenting challenges, especially due to regulatory capacity and financing gap. So we need to learn more from other countries going before us, so that our transition is not a disruptive, but rather gradual, smooth, well-balanced, and meaningfully learning process. And to realize such transformative changes require more active participation and broader collaboration from all stakeholders, local and international, including your organization, like-minded organization here, I think. And we need, of course, huge investment and sustainable finances. And we call on the UN agency, development partners, private sector, and all parties to work closely with us to support our commitment and needs to address the challenges and achieve our vision of low carbon, climate resilient, and prosperous and harmonious society. Thank you. And I will welcome any question or comment if you have any. Thank you.
Many thanks, State Secretary Mao. So I think first, thank you for your ambition. Despite all the difficulties on your country, also especially Cambodia is also quite heavily impacted by climate change, heat events, and important strategies in buildings are very important. And thank you also for the collaboration with the project and your efforts on construction materials and upgrading the building code step by step. And we very much are engaged in collaborating with you and increasing this. So we also have Mr. Visarut Metashit from Thailand. He is working at the Department of Alternative Energy Development and Energy Efficiency in the Ministry of Energy in Thailand. So, Visarut, I would like to give the hand over to you. Maybe it would be great if you can give us a little elaboration. What are the efforts ahead in Thailand to increase energy efficiency? We have the global stock take of doubling energy efficiency by 2030, so we're eager to hear what Thailand is doing here in this area in buildings.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. Just like many other countries, Thailand also has the target for carbon neutrality in the year 2050 and the net zero emission by the year 2065. But to do so, in this case, in the case of Thailand, the energy sector is one of the major polluter. And basically, for the building sector, 20% of the final energy consumption belongs to the building, either in the commercial or residential sector. So building is a very important sector in our effort. And that's why Thailand decided to join the ALCBT project in order to help accelerate energy efficiency in buildings. So I would like to take this opportunity to talk about some of the efforts in Thailand from the energy perspective. So for example, what we have right now as the government is the regulation. We have regulation both for the new and existing building. For the new building, what we have is the Building Energy Code, in which we require all new and retrofitting buildings, which are larger than 2,000 square meter. They have to have their building design inspected and make sure that they are in compliance with the Building Energy Code. In this case, the Building Energy Code will cover the building envelope, the lighting system, the air conditioning system, the water heating appliances, and renewable energy. We have been enforcing the Building Energy Code since a long time ago for the public buildings, but for the private sector buildings, we have just started enforcing earlier last year, and we have seen quite a success in that perspective. And in the future, what we would like to do here is to enforce the programs more, as well as strengthen the Building Energy Code, as well as to consider the energy emission in the the embedded energy and embedded carbon in the material, which we hope that the ALCBT project can help us in that perspective. As for existing building, we also have regulation, and we require large buildings to conduct energy management system. And in this case, the energy management system is required by law, and they have to conduct the energy management system and submit energy management report to our department every year. And our expectation is by conducting energy management system, the energy efficiency in buildings will gradually improve over time after they have considered what are equipments that might not use energy efficiently, and they address that, and over time we should see a reduction in energy consumption. So that is what we have in place right now in the context of regulation. We also have various kind of incentive available to promote energy efficiency. We have financial incentive in the form of subsidy, in which we may subsidize 20 or 30% when buildings replace old equipment with high efficiency ones. The 20 to 30% depends on the type of equipment that they are replacing. We also have tax incentive for green projects, in which they are exempted from import duties if they are importing equipment, and they are also eligible for corporate income tax exemption, for example. As for financial incentive that could be interesting and is in the pipeline right now, we have been in discussion with the Bank of Thailand in order to develop the green taxonomy, in which the projects that would be requesting loans would then be classified into 3 different colors: red, yellow, and green. And the red one, basically, we expect that banks and financial institutions will not finance red projects. And for the yellow and green, there'll be financing, but green projects would expect to have lower interest rates. As for the current progress of the discussion, we are still considering the way to define what would be considered green projects and what is going to be the appropriate benchmark for the country. And that is what we are working on right now. As for some challenges, of course, energy price is one of the main issues. Particularly, we see that if the energy price go low, then people are less inclined to conduct energy efficiency projects, which in that case, what we need to do is to try to find some other kind of incentive in order to make people would like to implement energy efficiency more. And in the case of Thailand, we have things like increasing what we call the floor to area ratio, which in this case, what that means is that if they want to construct buildings and they are trying to use designs that is energy efficient, then they are eligible for having more floors in their building, more than those allowed by the regulation, for example. There are many other challenges and things that we have implemented so far, but I think I'm running out of time. So I
Yeah.
think I will end my session here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mitashid. And I think it's very, very good to hear the ambition Thailand is already undertaking. And I think when we have the 5 Asian countries, I think Thailand is quite advanced. Also, not only looking at new buildings, but also having really clear standards for existing buildings and retrofitting. And that is also an important element of our project, to have learnings across the different countries and to promote this, this understanding. So, yeah, many thanks. So I would also like to open the floor maybe to 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if there is any. So I think it doesn't seem to see. So yeah, so I think with this we have concluded the time, and I'd like to thank everybody for the contributions, and I look forward very much continue working with all of you. Thank you.